She thought the worst night of her life was when her manager shaved her head in front of everyone until 99 bikers pulled into the parking lot. Their leader took one look at her tears, and something changed in his eyes. What she didn't know: 3 years ago, she'd shown them kindness on their darkest day, and they never forgot. Emily's hands were shaking as she carried the tray of dirty plates toward the kitchen. It was 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before her double shift would finally end. Her feet ached, her lower back screamed with every step, and all she wanted was to collapse into her car and drive home to her tiny apartment. She didn't see the water puddle near the dish station. Her left foot slipped. The tray tilted. 3 plates crashed to the floor, shattering into ceramic fragments that scattered across the greasy tiles like broken stars. What the hell was that? Emily's stomach dropped. Ron's voice carried that particular edge. The one that meant he'd been drinking in his office again. The one that turned a simple accident into a catastrophe. "I'm sorry, Ron. I'll clean it up right now." "You'll clean it up." Ron emerged from the back office. His face flushed red, his tie loosened around his thick neck. At 52, he'd managed the roadside diner for 18 years. And in that time, he'd perfected the art of making his employees feel worthless. "That's the 3rd time this week you've broken something, Emily. 3rd time, it was an accident. There's water on the floor? Always an excuse with you." He moved closer, and Emily could smell the whiskey on his breath. The other 2 employees in the kitchen, Marcus the night cook, and Jennifer, another waitress, had gone silent, their eyes fixed on their workstations. They knew better than to intervene. "You know what your problem is. You think you're special. You think because you're saving up for nursing school, you're better than this place." "I never said that." "You don't have to say it. I can see it in your face every time you walk in here." Ron grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her bicep. "Come with me, Ron, please." "I said, come with me." He dragged her toward the back storage room, past the walk-in freezer, past the shelves of industrial-sized cans and cleaning supplies. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. Marcus took a half-step forward, but Jennifer grabbed his wrist and shook her head. They both knew what happened to employees who challenged Ron. They got their hours cut, their schedules changed to the worst shifts, their paychecks mysteriously short. Ron shoved Emily into the storage room and slammed the door behind them. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across boxes of paper towels and napkins. "You want to know what happens to people who think they're too good for their jobs?" Ron reached up to the top shelf and pulled down something Emily couldn't quite see in the dim light. When he turned around, her blood went cold. Electric hair clippers. "Ron, what are you teaching you a lesson about humility? You can't be serious." He grabbed her by the shoulder and forced her down onto a metal folding chair. Emily tried to stand, but he pressed his palm against the top of her head, holding her in place. The clippers buzzed to life with a mechanical whine that seemed to fill the entire room. "Please don't do this," Emily whispered. Tears were already streaming down her face. "Please, Ron, I'm sorry about the plates. I'll pay for them. I'll work extra shifts." Too late for that. The first pass of the clippers cut a stripe through her dark brown hair. Emily watched in horror as chunks fell to the concrete floor around her feet. She'd been growing her hair for 2 years, keeping it long and healthy. One of the few things that made her feel pretty on days when everything else felt like it was falling apart. Ron worked methodically, almost casually, humming under his breath as he shaved another stripe, then another. Emily stopped fighting. She stopped crying. She just sat there numb, watching her hair pile up around her like the shattered plates in the kitchen. When he finished, Ron stepped back to admire his work. Emily's head was covered in uneven patches of stubble, some areas shaved to the skin, others left with awkward tufts. She looked like a person who'd lost a fight with a lawnmower. "There," Ron said, setting the clippers back on the shelf. "Now you look like you belong here. Now get out there and finish your shift." Emily stood on unsteady legs. She caught her reflection in the small mirror hanging near the employee time clock, and something inside her broke. Not her spirit. She'd lost that months ago, worn down by Ron's constant belittling and the crushing weight of minimum wage and impossible dreams. No, what broke was something deeper. Her sense that if she just kept her head down, if she just endured, things would eventually get better. She grabbed her purse from her locker, ignoring Ron's shouts about abandoning her shift. Marcus and Jennifer watched her go, their faces pale with shock. She shoved through the kitchen doors, through the mostly empty dining room where the last 2 customers stared at her ruined head, and burst out into the parking lot. The night air hit her face like cold water. Emily pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to hold back the sobs that threatened to tear out of her chest. She didn't know where she was going. Home felt too far away. The police felt too complicated. Who would believe her word against Ron's? He'd probably say she did this to herself, some kind of breakdown. And without witnesses willing to contradict him, she'd be the crazy one. That's when she heard them, a low rumble in the distance growing louder. Emily looked up through tear-blurred eyes and saw headlights approaching on the highway. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens. The sound of motorcycle engines filled the night, a thunderous chorus that made the ground vibrate beneath her feet. The Iron Covenant was coming. The motorcycles rolled into the parking lot like a steel wave, their chrome gleaming under the diner's flickering neon sign. Emily counted 15, then 20, then lost track as they kept coming. forming a semicircle that dominated the entire lot. The engines created a symphony of controlled power, each bike worth more than Emily made in 6 months. She'd seen them before. The Iron Covenant stopped at the roadside diner every Thursday night around midnight, regular as clockwork. They were always polite, tipped well, and never caused trouble despite their intimidating appearance. But Emily had never been outside when they arrived, had never stood this close to so many of them at once. The lead bike cut its engine, the rider dismounted with practiced ease. A massive man, at least 6'4", with a salt and pepper beard that reached the middle of his chest. His leather vest bore patches that told stories Emily couldn't read. Club insignia, memorial tags, riding achievements, spanning decades. The other bikers called him Bear, and the name fit perfectly. Bear pulled off his helmet and hung it on his handlebar. His eyes swept the parking lot, taking in the scene with the careful assessment of someone who'd learned to read trouble from a distance. Then his gaze landed on Emily. She watched his expression change. The casual ease vanished, replaced by something harder, darker. His jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Emily realized she was still standing in the middle of the parking lot, her hand pressed against her nearly bare scalp, tears streaming down her face. She must have looked like a victim of some terrible accident or worse. Bear walked toward her slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel. The other bikers had dismounted now, 99 riders in total, and they watched their leader with focused attention. Something unspoken passed between them, attention that made the air feel charged with electricity. "Ma'am," Bear's voice was surprisingly gentle, almost a whisper. "Are you all right?" Emily opened her mouth to say yes, to lie like she'd learned to lie every day she worked for Ron, but nothing came out. She just shook her head. Bear's eyes moved from her face to her shaved head, taking in the uneven patches, the redness where the clippers had scraped too hard. His breathing changed. Emily saw something flash across his face, pain mixed with rage. A wound reopened. "Who did this to you?" he asked. It doesn't matter. It matters." Bear glanced back at the diner, at the lit windows where Emily could see Ron watching them from behind the counter. Was it him? The manager? Emily didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. Bear's hands unclenched. He took a deep breath, then another, visibly forcing himself to stay calm. When he looked back at Emily, his eyes were wet. "My sister," he said quietly. 15 years ago, her boyfriend did the same thing to her, shaved her head to punish her for talking back. He paused, swallowing hard. She hung herself 3 days later. She was 23 years old. Emily felt the words hit her like physical blows. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just let me help you." Bear turned to the other riders. "Snake Torch, come here. The rest of you park and hold position." 2 bikers approached, one tall and lean with tattooed arms, the other shorter and stocky with a scarred face. They flanked Bear protectively as he gently guided Emily away from the center of the parking lot, away from the diner's windows. "What's your name?" Bear asked. "Emily." "I'm Bear. This is Snake and Torch. We've been stopping at this diner for 5 years, and I've seen you working hard every time. You've always been kind to us, always smiled. Even when you looked exhausted." He glanced at the diner again. "That man in there? He did this to you tonight." Emily nodded. "He said it was to teach me a lesson. About humility." Snake cursed under his breath. Torch's face went rigid. "Did anyone see it happen?" Bear asked. "2 other employees, Marcus and Jennifer, but they won't say anything. They're too scared of losing their jobs." Bear nodded slowly, his mind clearly working through possibilities. The other bikers had parked now, forming a wall of motorcycles and leather between Emily and the diner. Some stood with arms crossed, others leaned against their bikes, but all of them watched Bear for direction. "Emily, I want you to know something," Bear said. "You don't have to be scared anymore. Not tonight. We're not going anywhere until this is made right. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me. We're already involved. The moment I saw you standing here looking like," he stopped, his voice thick with emotion, "looking like my sister did. I can't turn away from this. None of us can." He walked toward the diner entrance, his boots heavy on the pavement. The other bikers fell into formation behind him, 99 strong, moving with the coordinated precision of people who'd ridden together through storms and sunshine, through good times and bad. Ron stood behind the glass door, his face pale, his hand reaching for the phone on the wall. Bear stopped inches from the glass and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "You need to come outside now." Ron's hand trembled as he lifted the phone receiver. Through the glass door, Emily could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air. Behind him, Marcus and Jennifer had emerged from the kitchen, their eyes wide as they took in the wall of bikers filling the parking lot. "I'm calling the police," Ron shouted through the glass. "You're trespassing on private property." Bear didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his hands visible at his sides, making no threatening gestures. "We're customers. This is a public establishment. We're not trespassing. You're intimidating my staff." "Your staff?" Bear's voice carried across the parking lot, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Is that what you call Emily? Staff that you can assault and humiliate?" Ron's face flushed red. "I don't know what lies she's been telling you, but that girl had a mental breakdown. She did that to herself. I was trying to calm her down." "That's not true." The voice came from inside the diner. Marcus had stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. Jennifer grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back, but he shook her off. I saw what you did, Ron. We both saw it. Ron spun around. You keep your mouth shut or you're fired. I already quit. Marcus pulled off his apron and threw it on the floor. I should have said something months ago when you pulled that stunt with Jennifer. When you cornered her in the walk-in freezer, and that's enough. Ron's voice cracked. He pointed at Marcus with a shaking finger. You're terminated. Get out of my diner. Marcus walked toward the door, and Bear stepped aside to let him pass. The young cook stood on the pavement looking at Emily with guilt written across his face. I'm sorry, he said to her. I should have stopped him. I was scared. It's okay, Emily whispered. Though it wasn't, nothing about this was okay. More customers had emerged from the diner now. An elderly couple who'd been finishing their pie, a trucker who'd stopped for coffee. They slipped past the bikers nervously, hurrying to their vehicles. Within minutes, the parking lot was cleared of everyone except the Iron Covenant, Emily, Marcus, and Ron, who remained barricaded inside. Bear pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police myself. We'll wait right here until they arrive. You think they'll believe you over me? Ron's voice had gained confidence now, fed by something Emily recognized. The certainty of a man who'd gotten away with things before, who knew how to work the system. I've been a respected business owner in this county for 18 years. You're a bunch of bikers with criminal records. Bear's jaw tightened, but he didn't take the bait. We'll see what they believe when they get here. Snake leaned close to Bear and whispered something Emily couldn't hear. Bear nodded, then looked at Torch. Go check the side entrance. Make sure he doesn't slip out the back. As Torch moved toward the side of the building, Emily felt panic rising in her chest. This was escalating too fast. Ron had connections. He'd bragged about golfing with the county sheriff, about his cousin who worked in the DA's office. What if the police arrived and believed his version? What if they arrested the bikers for harassment? Bear, please. Emily touched his arm. This isn't worth it. He's not worth it. I'll find another job. I'll move on. Bear turned to her, and in his eyes, Emily saw something that made her throat tighten. It wasn't just anger at Ron. It was something deeper, older. The pain of a man who'd lost his sister and had lived with that failure for 15 years. You can move on if you want, he said quietly, but I can't. Not this time. Inside the diner, Ron had dialed 911. Emily could see him talking animatedly into the phone, gesturing at the windows. She could imagine what he was saying. A gang of bikers was threatening him. He feared for his safety. He was a victim under siege. The other bikers remained motionless, their presence a silent wall of solidarity. Some had their arms crossed, others leaned against their bikes, but none of them showed aggression. They were simply there occupying space, refusing to leave. A younger biker with long blonde hair approached Bear. What's the play here, boss? We wait. We don't touch anything. Don't break anything. Don't give them any excuse. Bear's voice carried authority. When the cops come, we tell the truth. We show them Emily. We let Marcus testify to what he saw. And if they don't listen, the blonde biker asked, then we make sure everyone in this county knows what happened here tonight. We make noise until someone pays attention. Bear looked at Emily. You deserve justice. Real justice, not just walking away and pretending it didn't happen. Emily wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the system would work, that truth would matter, that powerful men like Ron could actually be held accountable. But she'd worked at the roadside diner for 2 years, had listened to Ron's stories about his connections, had watched him talk his way out of health code violations and labor complaints. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Ron smiled from behind the glass, and Emily's stomach turned to ice. This wasn't going to end well. Emily didn't sleep that night. She'd lain in her narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling of her apartment, replaying the scene with the police over and over in her mind. The officers had arrived at 12:17 a.m. to patrol cars, lights flashing, but no sirens. They'd spoken to Ron first inside the diner for almost 20 minutes. Then they'd come outside and questioned Bear with hands resting casually on their gun belts, speaking in clipped, suspicious tones. When they finally got to Emily, their questions felt more like accusations. Why didn't you call us immediately if you were assaulted? Did you threaten your manager before he allegedly did this? Are you sure you didn't do this to yourself for attention? Marcus had tried to corroborate her story, but the senior officer cut him off. You already admitted you quit. Sounds like you have an axe to grind with your former employer. By 2 a.m., the police had left with a warning to the Iron Covenant about loitering and harassment. No charges filed against Ron, no report taken about the assault. Just a suggestion that Emily seek counseling if she was experiencing a mental health crisis. Bear had given Emily his phone number and told her not to give up, but as she'd driven home alone, running her hand over her butchered hair, defeat had settled into her bones like poison. Now it was 9:47 a.m., and her phone was ringing. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the area code was from corporate headquarters, 3 states away. Emily's heart jumped. Maybe someone had heard about what happened. Maybe they were calling to help. Hello, Emily Rodriguez. The voice was female, professional, cold as January ice. Yes, this is Emily. This is Patricia Winters from Human Resources at Roadside Diner Corporate. I'm calling regarding an incident report filed by your manager, Ronald Kessler. Emily sat up straighter. He filed a report. I'm the one who was assaulted. He shaved my head. Miss Rodriguez, I need you to stop right there. Patricia's voice sharpened. Mr. Kessler has provided us with a detailed account of last night's events. According to his statement, you became erratic during your shift, began screaming at customers, and when he tried to intervene, you grabbed electric clippers from the storage room and shaved your own head while threatening to sue the company for emotional distress. Emily felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. That's not true. That's not what happened at all. Mr. Kessler also states that you left your shift without authorization and incited a motorcycle gang to harass him and threaten the business. The police were called. Ms. Rodriguez, this is extremely serious. The police know what Ron did. I told them. The police report indicates no evidence of assault. It does, however, document the presence of multiple individuals who created a hostile environment at the diner at your apparent instigation. Patricia paused, and Emily could hear papers rustling. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm calling to inform you that you're being placed on immediate unpaid suspension pending investigation. Any further attempts to damage Mr. Kessler's reputation or the company's reputation will result in immediate termination and potential legal action. Legal action? Emily's voice cracked. He assaulted me. There were witnesses. According to our records, the only witness willing to go on record is a disgruntled employee who quit during the incident. That's hardly credible testimony. Patricia's tone softened slightly, but it felt calculated rather than genuine. Ms. Rodriguez, between you and me, the best thing you can do right now is accept that you had a difficult night, take some time off, and let this blow over. If you continue making false accusations, you'll only hurt yourself. They're not false. Then I suggest you find proof, real proof. Otherwise, this conversation is over. Patricia paused. You have 10 days of unpaid suspension. If you show up at any roadside diner location during that time, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Do you understand? Emily's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. I understand. The line went dead. She sat there for a long moment staring at nothing. The apartment felt too small. Suddenly, the walls pressing in. She'd worked at that diner for 2 years, dealing with Ron's temper and his inappropriate comments and his constant belittling, all because she needed the money for nursing school. She'd saved $8,000 so far, kept it in a special account she'd opened the day she got hired, adding to it week by week, telling herself that one day she'd have enough to enroll and escape this life. Now she was suspended without pay. In 10 days, she'd probably be fired. Her dream of nursing school would die with her job. Emily walked to her bathroom and looked in the mirror. The uneven patches of stubble made her look sick, broken. She picked up a disposable razor from the sink and finished what Ron had started, shaving her entire head smooth. At least now it looked intentional rather than sadistic. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Corporate got to you already, didn't they? Don't give up. We're not done yet, Bear. Emily stared at the message. Part of her wanted to text back and tell him it was over, that she couldn't fight this, that men like Ron always won. But another part of her, the part that had kept pushing through double shifts and rude customers and impossible exhaustion, wasn't quite ready to surrender. She texted back, "How did you know?" The response came within seconds. Because this is exactly what powerful men do when they think they can get away with it. Meet me at the Iron Covenant Clubhouse at 2 p.m. There's something you need to know. The Iron Covenant Clubhouse sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by tall pines that filtered the afternoon sunlight into golden shafts. Emily had expected something rough, maybe a rundown warehouse or a dingy bar. Instead, she found a well-maintained 2-story building with freshly painted siding, a wraparound porch, and an American flag snapping in the breeze. Bear was waiting on the porch steps, a cup of coffee in his massive hands. He stood when her car pulled up, and Emily noticed he'd changed from his riding leathers into jeans and a simple black t-shirt. Without the intimidating vest and boots, he looked more like someone's uncle than the leader of a motorcycle club. "Thanks for coming," he said as Emily climbed out of her car. She'd worn a baseball cap to cover her now completely shaved head, but she still felt exposed, vulnerable. "Your text said there was something I needed to know." "There is, but first, how are you holding up?" Emily almost laughed. "Corporate called this morning. I'm suspended without pay for 10 days. After that, I'll probably be fired. They believe Ron's version of everything." She felt tears threatening again, and blinked them back angrily. "I can't afford to lose this job. I have rent due in 2 weeks, and my nursing school fund is all I have saved up." Bear nodded slowly. "Come inside. There are some people who want to talk to you." The clubhouse interior surprised Emily even more than the exterior. The main room was spacious and clean with comfortable furniture, framed photographs covering the walls, and a long wooden bar along one side. But what caught her attention were the people waiting there. At least 20 bikers, men and women, some in their 30s, others clearly in their 60s or 70s. An older woman with silver-streaked hair and laugh lines around her eyes stepped forward. She wore a leather vest adorned with patches that read Iron Covenant and Property of Hammer. Her eyes were kind but sharp, the eyes of someone who didn't miss much. "Emily," she said warmly, "I'm Rosé. I've been riding with this club for 32 years. She gestured to the others. We asked Bear to invite you here because there's something you need to understand. Something we've been keeping from you. Emily glanced at Bear, confused. What do you mean? Rose pulled out a chair at a large wooden table. Please sit down. Emily sat, her heart pounding. The bikers gathered around the table, forming a circle. An older man with a gray beard, his vest identified him as Hammer, Rose's husband, cleared his throat. 3 years ago, Hammer began, there was a massive storm. You remember it? The one that knocked out power for 2 days? Flooded half the county roads. Emily nodded. She remembered. It had been terrifying with wind that rattled the diner's windows and rain that turned the parking lot into a lake. We were on our way back from a memorial ride, Rose continued, for Bear's sister. Actually, it was the 10th anniversary of her death. We got caught in that storm about 40 miles out, and by the time we made it to the roadside diner, we were soaked, freezing, and exhausted. The place was supposed to be closed, another biker added. A man with a scarred face Emily recognized as Torch. Lights were off. Parking lot was empty. But then we saw someone inside. Emily's breath caught. She remembered that night now. Remembered seeing the headlights through the rain-streaked windows. You were there? Bear said quietly. Alone? Your shift had ended hours earlier. But you'd stayed because Ron had called in sick and left you too close by yourself. You could have turned us away, locked the doors, and gone home. Instead, you opened up. The memory flooded back. Emily had been terrified at first, seeing 99 bikers rolling up to the diner in the middle of a storm, but they'd been polite, desperate for hot coffee and shelter, and something in their faces had touched her heart. They'd looked lost, grieving. You made us coffee, Rose said, her voice thick with emotion, and then you started cooking. You said if we were going to wait out the storm, we should have proper food. You made eggs, bacon, pancakes, toast, enough to feed all 99 of us. You wouldn't accept payment for any of it, Hammer added. We tried to leave money on the tables, but you refused. You said we looked like we'd had a hard day, and everyone deserved kindness on hard days. Emily remembered now. She'd been running on pure adrenaline and instinct, cooking frantically in the empty diner while the storm raged outside. The bikers had been so grateful, so respectful. When they'd finally left around 3 a.m., she'd felt good about what she'd done, even though Ron had yelled at her the next day for wasting food without authorization. That night, Bear said, we made a pact. All 99 of us. We agreed that if you ever needed help, real help, the kind that matters, we'd be there. No questions asked, no hesitation. We've been watching over you ever since, Rose said, stopping by every Thursday to check on you, making sure you were okay. We knew Ron was a piece of work. We'd heard rumors about how he treated his staff, but you always smiled, always seemed to be holding on. Torch leaned forward until last night, when we saw what he'd done to you. Emily's vision blurred with tears. I had no idea you even remembered that night. Remembered it. Bear's voice was rough. Emily, that was the first time in 10 years I'd felt anything close to peace. You gave us shelter when we needed it most. Gave us warmth and food and kindness. You gave that to us on the anniversary of the worst day of my life. He paused, swallowing hard. We owe you a debt that can't be repaid, but we're going to try. Rose reached across the table and took Emily's hand. You're not alone in this fight. You have 99 people who will stand with you no matter what it takes. Emily looked around the table at their faces, weathered, scarred, but filled with fierce determination. For the first time since Ron had shaved her head, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope. The plan was simple. Get Emily's belongings from the diner and leave quietly. No confrontation, no drama. Bear had insisted on it. We need to be smart about this, he'd said at the clubhouse. Ron's already painted you as unstable and us as a gang of thugs. We give him any excuse and he'll use it against you. Now, at 11 p.m., Emily sat in Bear's truck as they pulled into the roadside diner's parking lot. Only 3 other bikers had come. Snake, Torch, and Rose. The rest stayed behind, though Emily knew they were just a phone call away. The diner was closed, the neon sign dark, except for the dim security lights visible through the windows. Ron's car was gone, replaced by a silver Honda that Emily recognized as belonging to Marcus. Marcus is closing tonight. Emily was surprised. I thought Ron fired him. Maybe he came back, Rose suggested. Or maybe Ron's desperate for staff after losing both of you. They approached the front door carefully. Bear knocked, and after a moment, Marcus appeared. His eyes widened when he saw Emily, then shifted nervously to the bikers behind her. Emily, what are you doing here? If Ron finds out, I'm suspended, not fired. Not yet, anyway. Emily kept her voice steady. I just need to get my things from my locker, my spare clothes, my photos. I have a right to my personal belongings. Marcus glanced over his shoulder into the empty diner, then opened the door. Make it quick. Ron's been paranoid since last night. He installed 2 new security cameras today and told me to call him immediately if you showed up. New cameras? Torch's voice was sharp. Where? Marcus pointed 2 corners of the dining room where small black devices now hung. One there, one by the kitchen entrance. He also replaced the DVR system, said the old one was malfunctioning. Emily and Bear exchanged glances. What happened to the old footage? Emily asked. He said it got corrupted in the transfer. Marcus looked uncomfortable. But I don't think that's true. Why not? Snake asked. Marcus hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. Because I saved a copy before he erased it. Emily's heart nearly stopped. You what? I've been here for 4 years, Marcus said quietly. I've seen Ron do a lot of terrible things. Harassment, wage theft, forcing girls to work off the clock. I started backing up the security footage 6 months ago just in case I ever needed proof. When I saw what he did to you, he pressed the USB drive into Emily's hand. This has everything. The whole assault from 3 different camera angles. It's time-stamped, dated, unedited. Emily stared at the tiny device in her palm. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Marcus, if Ron finds out you have this, he won't. I told him I formatted the old drives before throwing them out. Marcus managed a weak smile. Get justice, Emily. Make it mean something that I finally grew a spine. Bear squeezed Marcus's shoulder. You did the right thing, son. They moved quickly to the back where the employee lockers stood in a narrow hallway. Emily spun her combination lock, hands shaking with adrenaline and hope. Inside were her spare uniform, a framed photo of her late mother, her nursing school brochures, and a small emergency fund she kept hidden in an old eyeglass case. $200 in cash. She stuffed everything into her backpack while the bikers kept watch. Rose stood at the kitchen entrance. Snake near the front door and Torch with Marcus near the new security cameras. We should go, Bear said. We've got what we came for. They were halfway to the front door when headlights swept across the parking lot. It's Ron, Marcus hissed. He must have been watching the cameras remotely. He can do that with the new system. Back door, Snake suggested, but Torch shook his head. He's parking right in front of it. We're boxed in. Ron burst through the front entrance, his face purple with rage. Behind him were 2 other men Emily didn't recognize. Both large, both wearing security guard uniforms. I knew it, Ron shouted. Breaking and entering. Harassment. I've got you all on camera this time. He pointed at Emily. You're trespassing. You're all trespassing. I'm calling the police right now. She came for her personal belongings, Bear said calmly. That's not trespassing. That's her legal right. Legal right? Ron laughed, but it was a manic sound. You don't have any rights. Not in my diner. His eyes found Marcus. And you let them in. You're fired again, permanently this time. One of the security guards stepped forward, hand on his pepper spray. Sir, we need everyone to leave the premises immediately, or we'll have to use force. Emily's hand closed around the USB drive in her pocket. They had the evidence. They just needed to get out of here with it intact. But Ron was staring at Marcus with narrow eyes. What did you give her? I saw you hand her something. Marcus went pale. Nothing. I didn't search them. Ron ordered the security guards. They're stealing company property. Bear moved to stand in front of Emily. Nobody's searching anyone without the police present and probable cause. Ron's smile was vicious. Oh, the police are coming. And this time you're all going to jail. Through the window, Emily could already see flashing lights in the distance. They'd gotten the evidence, but now they were trapped. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Emily sat on a hard plastic chair in the waiting area, the USB drive burning like hot coal in her pocket. Bear sat beside her, his face carved from stone, while Snake and Torch leaned against the far wall. Rose had been allowed to leave after giving her statement, but the rest of them had been brought in for questioning. It was 2:30 a.m. Officer Ricks emerged from the back hallway. The same cop who'd responded to the diner last night. He looked even less sympathetic now. Ms. Rodriguez, you're free to go for now. Emily stood quickly. What about them? The bikers stay? We need to verify a few things about their statements. Hendrix's tone suggested those few things would take a while. You should go home. Get some rest. Bear caught Emily's eye and gave a subtle nod. The message was clear. Take the evidence and go. Emily walked out into the cold pre-dawn air, her heart hammering. She'd managed to slip the USB drive into her sock during the confusion at the diner, and somehow the security guards hadn't found it during their aggressive pat-down. Now she had proof of Ron's assault. But what good was it if the police wouldn't even look at it? She climbed into her car and was about to start the engine when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't try to submit that footage to the police. Officer Hendricks plays poker with Ron every Tuesday. You'll never see that USB drive again. A friend. Emily's blood ran cold. She looked back at the police station, its windows glowing yellow in the darkness. How deep did Ron's connections go? How many people in this town were on his side? Another text arrived. Make copies. Hide the original. Trust no one in the local PD. Emily didn't know who was texting her, but the advice felt sound. She drove to a 24-hour pharmacy, used their computer kiosk to make 3 copies of the footage onto separate drives, then mailed one to herself at a friend's address in another state. The original went into a safety deposit box at her bank, which wouldn't open until 9 a.m. by the time she got home. The sun was rising and exhaustion had settled into her bones, but she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ron's face, smug and confident, as the police led her away. Her phone rang at 7:15 a.m. Bear's number. They held us until an hour ago, he said. his voice rough with fatigue. Questioned us separately, tried to catch us in contradictions. They're building a case that we're harassing Ron, that we damaged his property. Did you damage anything? Emily asked, though she already knew the answer. Not a damn thing. But Ron filed a formal complaint claiming we broke his new security cameras and vandalized the kitchen. He's got photos. That's impossible. We didn't touch anything. I know, which means he staged it after we left. Bear paused. Emily, this is worse than I thought. Ron's not just connected, he's prepared. He's been setting this up since last night, building a narrative where you're the unstable employee and we're the dangerous gang. Emily sank onto her couch, feeling defeat wash over her. What do? We fight back. But we need to be smarter. Bear's voice hardened with determination. Do you still have the footage? Safe? Multiple copies. Good. Don't try to give it to local police. We need to go hire state investigators. Maybe the labor board or the media. Someone outside Ron's circle of influence. Emily was about to respond when someone knocked on her apartment door. Hard official knocks that made her stomach drop. Someone's here, she whispered into the phone. Don't open it until you know who it is. Emily crept to the door and looked through the peephole. 2 men in suits stood in the hallway, badges clipped to their belts. Not local police. These were detectives. She opened the door. For a crack, chain lock still engaged. Can I help you? The older detective, a man with gray temples and tired eyes, held up his badge. Detective Morris, State Police? This is Detective Chen. We need to speak with you about an assault that occurred at the roadside diner 2 nights ago. Emily's heart leaped. State Police outside Ron's sphere. The assault against me. Morris's expression remained neutral. May we come in? Emily unhooked the chain and let them inside. Bear was still on the phone, and she put it on speaker. My friend Bear is on the line. He's a witness to what happened. Detective Chen, a younger Asian man with sharp eyes, looked around the small apartment before settling his gaze on Emily's shaved head. We received an anonymous tip this morning that there was video evidence of an assault. We're here to collect that evidence and conduct a formal investigation. Anonymous tip. Emily's mind raced. Who would have called the state police? We can't reveal our source, Morris said, but we take workplace assault very seriously. If you have footage, we need to see it. Emily hesitated. What if this was a trap? What if Ron had somehow arranged this, found a way to get the footage, and destroy it? Show them your badges again. Bear's voice came through the phone speaker. Front and back. Emily, take photos and text them to me. I'll verify they're legitimate. The detectives exchanged glances, but complied. Emily photographed their credentials and sent them to Bear. 30 seconds later, he texted back, they're real. State Criminal Investigation Division. Show them the footage. Emily retrieved one of the USB copies from where she'd hidden it in her freezer, wrapped in aluminum foil inside a bag of frozen peas. She handed it to Detective Chen. This shows everything, she said quietly. Ron Kessler, my manager, shaved my head with electric clippers as punishment for breaking dishes. There were 2 witnesses, Marcus Reeves and Jennifer Holstead. Detective Morris plugged the drive into his laptop. The footage played in grainy black and white, Emily being dragged into the storage room, forced into the chair, the clippers coming down again and again while she sobbed. When it finished, Chun's jaw was tight. Morris closed the laptop carefully. Ms. Rodriguez, Morris said, we'll need you to come to the station. Our station, not local, to give a formal statement. We'll also need to interview the witnesses and Mr. Kessler. Will he be arrested? Emily asked. If the evidence supports it, yes. But I need to warn you, Mr. Kessler has already filed multiple complaints. This is going to get complicated. Through the phone, Bear's voice was steady. We're ready for complicated. Emily looked at the detectives, at their serious faces, and felt something shift inside her. For the first time since that horrible night, she felt like someone with actual power was listening. So am I, she said. The story hit social media on day 3. Emily didn't know who leaked it. Maybe Marcus, maybe one of the bikers, maybe someone else who'd heard what happened. But by Wednesday afternoon, a video titled Manager Assaults Waitress, Justice Denied by Local Police was spreading across Facebook and Twitter like wildfire. It wasn't the security footage Emily had kept that sealed with the state investigators. This was something else. A 2-minute clip showing the aftermath. Emily standing in the parking lot with her shaved head. Bear confronting Ron through the glass. The local police arriving and doing nothing. Someone had filmed it on their phone from across the street. Within 6 hours, it had 50,000 views. Within 12 hours, Emily started receiving messages. Some were supportive. Stay strong, girl. Sue that bastard. We believe you. Others were vicious. Attention-seeking drama queen. You probably shaved your own head for the lawsuit money. By Thursday morning, the messages had found their way to her apartment. Emily discovered the first note slipped under her door when she went to get coffee. Block letters on lined paper. Drop it or else. Her hands shook as she read it. She triple-checked her door locks and texted Bear immediately. He arrived within 20 minutes. Torch and Snake with him. They examined the note, their faces grim. You can't stay here alone, Bear said flatly. Not until this is resolved. I can't afford a hotel. You'll stay at the clubhouse. We have guest rooms and there's always someone there. Bear's tone left no room for argument. Pack a bag. Now Emily wanted to protest, to insist she could handle herself. But another part of her, the part that had found that threatening note, was terrified. She packed quickly. Clothes, toiletries, her laptop, the nursing school brochures she couldn't bear to leave behind. As they loaded her car, Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B emerged from her door, arms crossed. You're bringing those bikers around here now. Some of us have children. Emily felt her face flush. Mrs. Chen, they're helping me. Helping you cause trouble. You mean, I saw the video? You should have handled this privately, gone through proper channels. Instead, you've turned our quiet neighborhood into a circus. Mrs. Chen's expression was cold. The landlord called a meeting. Several residents want you evicted. Evicted? I haven't done anything wrong. You've brought violence and chaos to our community. Those men, she gestured at the bikers, they're dangerous. Everyone can see that. Snake opened his mouth to respond, but Bear put a hand on his shoulder and shook his head. Ma'am, we understand your concern, but Emily is the victim here. She deserves support, not judgment. That's your opinion. Mrs. Chen turned on her heel and disappeared back into her apartment, door slamming behind her. Emily felt tears burning in her eyes. This is getting out of control. People fear what they don't understand. Rose's voice came from behind them. She'd arrived on her bike, leather vest gleaming in the morning sun. They see bikers and think danger. They don't see the people who'd give their last dollar to help someone in need. They drove in convoy to the clubhouse. Emily's car sandwiched between motorcycles, a protective escort that made her feel both safe and exposed. Neighbors watched from windows. Someone took photos. Emily could already imagine those pictures circulating online. Troubled waitress joins biker gang. At the clubhouse, Rose showed Emily to a small but comfortable guest room on the second floor. Clean sheets, a private bathroom, a window overlooking the pine trees. It felt safer than her apartment had in days. Get some rest, Rose said gently. You look exhausted. But rest wouldn't come. Emily lay on the bed, scrolling through her phone, watching her life become a public spectacle. The local news had picked up the story now, and the comment sections were brutal. Another woman making false accusations to get money. Those bikers are probably paying her to lie so they can extort the business. I know Ron Kessler. He's a pillar of this community. This girl is trash. But there were other voices too. I worked at that diner 3 years ago. Ron sexually harassed me daily. I believe her. My sister was assaulted by her boss, and nobody believed her either. Stay strong. The footage doesn't lie. That manager should be in jail. Emily's phone buzzed with a call from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Emily Rodriguez. A woman's voice, nervous, but determined. Yes, my name is Amanda Price. I worked at the roadside diner 5 years ago. The woman paused. I saw your story online. I need to tell you something. Ron did the same thing to me. Not the hair, but he assaulted me. He cornered me in the walk-in freezer, and her voice cracked. I reported it to corporate, and they paid me $10,000 to sign an NDA and go away quietly. Emily sat up straight. You signed a non-disclosure agreement. Yes, but watching what he did to you, seeing how they're trying to destroy your credibility, Amanda took a shaky breath. I'm willing to break it. I'm willing to testify about what he did to me, even if it means getting sued. He can't keep getting away with this. Amanda, if you break the NDA, I know the risks, but I have a daughter now. She's 3 years old. What kind of mother would I be if I stayed silent while other women got hurt? Amanda's voice strengthened. I'm not the only one, Emily. There are others. I've been making calls all morning. 2 more women are willing to come forward. Emily's hand trembled as she gripped the phone. Why now? Why didn't you all speak up before? Because we were alone, isolated, scared. Amanda paused. But you have 99 bikers standing behind you. You have proof. You have courage. You gave the rest of us permission to be brave, too. After the call ended, Emily walked downstairs to find Bear in the main room, studying a map spread across the table. He looked up when she entered. We have more witnesses, Emily said. Women Ron assaulted before me. They're willing to testify. Bear's expression shifted from surprise to something fiercer. The look of a man who just realized the battle had turned in their favor. Then we don't just fight for justice, he said. We fight to make sure he never hurts anyone again. Outside, the sound of approaching motorcycles announced more members arriving. The Iron Covenant was gathering, and this time they weren't just protecting one waitress. They were going to war. The cafe was called Morningside, a small independent place with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls far from the roadside diner's territory. Emily had chosen it carefully, somewhere Ron's friends wouldn't think to look. She arrived at 10 a.m. with Rose, who'd insisted on coming as both protection and moral support. 2 women were already waiting at a corner table, coffee cups cradled in their hands like shields. Amanda Price was older than Emily had expected, mid-30s, with dark circles under her eyes, and a professional blazer that looked too heavy for the warm room. The woman beside her was younger, maybe 25, with red hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and nervous hands that couldn't stay still. Emily Amanda stood extending her hand. This is Jenna Caldwell. She worked at the diner about 3 years ago. They shook hands and sat down. The weight of shared trauma hung over the table like smoke. Thank you for coming, Emily said quietly. I know this isn't easy. Amanda laughed bitterly. Easy? I haven't slept in 3 days. I keep expecting lawyers to show up at my door with lawsuits for breaking the NDA. She took a shaky sip of coffee. But I can't stay silent anymore. Not after seeing what he did to you. Jenna spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. He cornered me in the supply closet. Said if I wanted to keep my shifts, I needed to be nicer to him. Her hands clenched around her cup. When I refused, he cut my hours down to nothing. I couldn't pay my bills, so I had to quit. I was too ashamed to tell anyone why. It's not your shame to carry, Rose said firmly. It's his. I know that now. Jenna met Emily's eyes. But back then, I was 22 and scared. I thought maybe I'd done something to encourage him, worn the wrong thing, smiled too much. He made me feel like it was my fault. Emily recognized that feeling. The way Ron had made her question herself, doubt her own perceptions, accept treatment that should have been unacceptable. What made you decide to come forward? Emily asked. My therapist, Jenna said. I've been seeing her for 2 years, working through what happened. When I showed her your story, she said this was my chance to reclaim my power, that staying silent was protecting him, not me. Amanda nodded. I told my husband everything last night. He's been after me for years to do something about that $10,000 settlement. Said it was hush money, and I should have fought instead. I was too scared then. I'm tired of being scared now. A new voice spoke from behind them. Make that 3 witnesses. They turned to see a woman approaching their table. Late 40s, gray-streaked brown hair, wearing scrubs with a hospital ID badge clipped to her pocket. She pulled up a chair without asking. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I was a waitress at the roadside diner 15 years ago, back when I was putting myself through. She looked directly at Emily. Ron Kessler sexually assaulted me in his office after closing. When I reported it to the police, they said there wasn't enough evidence. Corporate offered me $5,000 to resign quietly. I took it because I needed the money for school. Emily's throat tightened. 15 years? He's been doing this for 15 years. At least, Sarah said grimly. Probably longer. Men like Ron don't suddenly start abusing power. They've been doing it all along, getting away with it because the system protects them. She pulled out a folder from her bag. I kept records, photographs of bruises, diary entries, text messages from Ron that were inappropriate. I never threw them away, even after I signed the settlement. Some part of me knew I'd need them someday. Rose leaned forward. Why now, Dr. Mitchell? Why come forward after all this time? Because I'm a doctor now. I took an oath to do no harm. Sarah's jaw tightened. Every year I stayed silent was another year Ron could hurt someone else. I've been living with that guilt for 15 years. When I saw Emily's story, I realized this is my chance to finally do the right thing. Emily felt overwhelmed by the weight of their stories, by the realization that she wasn't alone, that Ron had left a trail of victims spanning more than a decade. Will you all testify officially? Yes, Amanda said firmly. Absolutely, Jenna added. I'll do more than testify, Sarah said. I'll petition the medical board to investigate the diner's health violations, file complaints with the labor department, and use every professional connection I have to make sure this story doesn't get buried. There may be others, Rose said thoughtfully. If 3 women had the courage to come forward, there are probably more still in hiding. I've been thinking about that, Amanda said. She pulled out her phone and showed them a private Facebook group she'd created overnight. I called it Roadside Survivors at Secret Invitation Only. I've already found 4 more women who worked there and had similar experiences. They're not ready to go public yet, but they're willing to provide written statements to investigators. Emily stared at the screen. 7 women total. 7 lives Ron had damaged or destroyed. 7 people who'd been too afraid or too unsupported to speak up until now. The state detectives need to know about this, Emily said. All of it. I already contacted them, Sarah replied. Detective Morris is meeting me tomorrow morning. He seemed very interested in the pattern of behavior, especially when I mentioned the multiple settlements corporate has paid out over the years. Corporate, Emily said slowly. They've known all along. They've been paying women to stay quiet instead of firing Ron. That makes them liable, Sarah said with grim satisfaction. Not just for Ron's actions, but for enabling them. This isn't just about one abusive manager anymore. It's about an entire company that chose profit over safety. Jenna's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and went pale. It's Ron. He's texting me. He must have heard I was making inquiries. She showed them the message. Don't do something you'll regret. I have friends in this town. You have nothing. Emily felt anger surge through her chest, hot and clean. For 3 days, she'd been drowning in fear and doubt. But looking at these women, Amanda with her broken NDA, Jenna with her trembling hands, Sarah with 15 years of guilt in her eyes, she realized something. Ron was wrong. They weren't nothing. They were 4 women who'd survived him. For voices that could no longer be silenced. For testimonies that would paint a picture no court could ignore. He's right about one thing, Emily said quietly. He does have friends in this town. She looked at Rose at the Iron Covenant patch on her vest and thought about the 99 bikers who'd sworn to protect her. But so do I, Amanda smiled. the first real smile Emily had seen from her. "So what's our next move?" "We go to Detective Morris together," Emily said. "All four of us. We give him everything. The footage, the settlements, the testimonies, the pattern. We make it impossible for anyone to dismiss this as one woman's word against Ron's." And then Jenna asked. Emily thought about her nursing school fund, about her suspended job, about the threatening note under her door. She thought about Bear's sister who'd never gotten justice, who'd lost hope and lost her life. "Then we make sure Ron Kessler never hurts anyone again." The conference call was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Friday, exactly 1 week after Ron had shaved Emily's head. Detective Morris had arranged it, pulling strings with the state attorney general's office to force corporate headquarters into a formal discussion. Emily sat in a borrowed office at the state police barracks, surrounded by her unlikely army, Bear and Rose from the Iron Covenant, Amanda and Sarah as fellow survivors, Detective Maurice with his laptop open, and a state labor attorney named Rebecca Thornton who'd been assigned to the case. On the screen, 6 faces appeared from corporate headquarters, executives, lawyers, and Patricia Winters from HR, the woman who'd suspended Emily without pay. "Let's begin," said the man at the center of the screen. His nameplate read David Garrett, Chief Operating Officer. He looked uncomfortable, his tie slightly askew. "We're here to discuss the allegations against Ronald Kessler and the company's response." "Allegations?" Detective Morris's voice was ice. "Mr. Garrett, we have video evidence of assault. We have testimony from 4 separate victims spanning 15 years. We have documentation of at least 3 financial settlements your company paid to silence previous complaints. These aren't allegations, they're facts." Garrett shifted in his seat. "We take all complaints seriously." Sarah Mitchell leaned forward, her doctor's authority radiating through the screen. "Because when I reported Ron Kessler's assault 15 years ago, your company offered me $5,000 to sign an NDA and disappear. You didn't fire him, you didn't investigate. You paid me to be quiet so he could keep hurting people. That was handled according to our protocols at the time." "Your protocols protected a predator," Amanda interrupted. "I was paid $10,000 to stay silent 5 years ago. How many other women took settlements? How much money has your company spent covering up Ron Kessler's crimes?" Patricia Winters spoke up, her voice defensive. "We have to balance the rights of employees with the rights of managers to due process." "Due process." Emily finally found her voice. "You suspended me without pay based on Ron's lies. You threatened me with legal action for false accusations before anyone even investigated. Where was my due process?" A woman on the screen, the company's legal counsel, cleared her throat. "Ms. Rodriguez, we're prepared to offer you a settlement. Full back pay for your suspension, $25,000 in damages, and a neutral employment reference. In exchange, you'll sign a confidentiality agreement and release the company from all liability." "No," Emily said immediately. The lawyer blinked. "Excuse me," I said. "No. I'm not signing anything that protects Ron or this company. I'm not taking money to stay quiet while he stays employed." "Ms. Rodriguez, I don't think you understand the generosity of this offer." "I understand perfectly," Emily said, her voice steady. "You're trying to make this go away with money, just like you did with Amanda and Sarah and however many other women there are. But this time, it's not going away." Rebecca Thornton, the labor attorney, spoke up. "My office has been reviewing the roadside diners' employment records for the past 15 years. We've identified 12 separate complaints against Ronald Kessler, ranging from hostile work environment to sexual harassment to assault. In every case, the company either offered settlements or quietly transferred the complaining employee to another location until they quit." David Garrett's face had gone pale. "We were following legal advice. You were establishing a pattern of deliberate indifference," Thornton said sharply. "The State Labor Board is prepared to file charges against the corporation for creating and maintaining a hostile work environment, for retaliation against whistleblowers, and for failing to protect employees from a known danger." Furthermore, Detective Maurice added, "The State Attorney General's office is reviewing whether corporate officers should face criminal charges for obstruction of justice. You've systematically suppressed evidence of crimes and paid victims to stay silent. That's not just a civil matter. It's potentially criminal conspiracy." The executives on screen began whispering frantically to each other. One left the frame entirely. Patricia Winters looked like she might be sick. Bear had been silent until now, but he leaned into the camera's view. "I want to make something very clear. The Iron Covenant has 99 members. Every one of us has seen the footage of what Ron Kessler did to Emily. Every one of us knows women who've been assaulted, harassed, or silenced. If this corporation thinks it can sweep this under the rug, you're mistaken. We will protest at every roadside diner location in this state. We will share this story with every media outlet that will listen. We will make Ron Kessler's name synonymous with abuse and your company's name synonymous with complicity." "Is that a threat?" the legal counsel asked. "It's a promise," Rose said quietly. "We protect our own, and Emily is one of ours." A new face appeared on the screen, older, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone used to being obeyed. "This is James Whitmore, CEO. I've been listening to this conversation from my office." He looked tired, angry, but also something else. Ashamed. I was not aware of the scope of this problem. Patricia, David, you're both suspended pending a full internal investigation. Ron Kessler is terminated effective immediately, and we will cooperate fully with law enforcement. That's not enough, Sarah said. What about the other victims? What about making this right? Whitmore was quiet for a moment. We'll establish a compensation fund for anyone who signed NDAs related to Ron Kessler. We'll hire an independent firm to investigate our HR practices and implement reforms. And he looked directly at Emily. Ms. Rodriguez will pay for your nursing school education, full tuition, books, living expenses, not as a settlement, but as an apology and an investment in the person you're going to become. Emily felt tears prick her eyes, but she kept her voice steady. And Ron goes to jail. That's up to the criminal justice system, Detective Maurice said. But with 4 victims willing to testify, video evidence, and now corporate cooperation, I'm confident charges will be filed within the week. Amanda reached over and squeezed Emily's hand. Sarah nodded approvingly. Rose smiled with fierce pride. There's one more thing, Emily said. I want corporate to issue a public apology, not just to me, but to every woman Ron hurt. And I want you to end the practice of using NDAs in harassment and assault cases. No more silencing victims. Whitmore looked at his lawyers who were shaking their heads frantically. He ignored them. Agreed, he said. We'll draft this statement today. When the call ended, Emily sat back in her chair, exhausted, but lighter somehow. Bear put a hand on her shoulder. You did good, kid. We did good, Emily corrected. All of us. Detective Maurice closed his laptop. Ron Kessler will be arrested Monday morning. The DA's office is preparing charges, assault, false imprisonment, filing false police reports. With the additional testimonies, he's looking at serious prison time. Emily nodded, feeling something she hadn't felt in days. Hope mixed with justice. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, she could see the end. The courthouse was packed. Emily hadn't expected so many people. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras ready, while spectators filled every available seat. She recognized some faces. Marcus from the diner looking nervous in a borrowed suit, Mrs. Chen from her apartment building whose expression had softened to something approaching guilt, even a few regular customers from the roadside diner who'd always tipped well and treated her kindly. But most prominently, sitting in the first 3 rows on the left side were the members of the Iron Covenant. 99 bikers had shown up, dressed in their formal best, leather vests polished, patches straight, faces solemn. They weren't here to intimidate. They were here as witnesses to justice. Bear sat directly behind Emily, close enough that she could feel his steadying presence. Rose was beside him, holding hands with Hammer. Amanda, Sarah, and Jenna sat in the row behind them, forming a wall of survivors who'd refused to stay silent. Ron Kessler sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, expensive-looking man in a gray suit who'd been hired by Ron's family. Ron had aged in the past week. His face was haggarded, his suit rumpled, his confident swagger gone. He kept glancing nervously at the bikers, then at Emily, then down at his hands. All rise, the bailiff called. The Honorable Judge Margaret Preston presiding. Judge Preston was a black woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and non-incensed demeanor. She'd built a reputation for being fair but firm, someone who didn't tolerate manipulation or theatrics in her courtroom. Be seated, she said, settling into her chair. We're here for the preliminary hearing in the case of the state versus Ronald Kessler. Charges include assault and battery, false imprisonment, filing a false police report, and witness intimidation. She looked over her reading glasses at Ron. How does the defendant plead? Ron's lawyer stood. Not guilty, Your Honor, noted. Mr. Prosecutor, present your evidence. Assistant District Attorney Michael Torres stood, a young Latino man with an earnest face and a reputation for taking on difficult cases. Emily had met with him twice, and he promised her he wouldn't let this case become another statistic. Your Honor, the state will present video evidence clearly showing Mr. Kessler assaulting Ms. Emily Rodriguez, his employee, by forcibly shaving her head with electric clippers as punishment for a workplace accident. Torres clicked a remote and the courtroom screen flickered to life. The footage played in silence. Emily couldn't watch. She'd seen it too many times already. Instead, she focused on the reactions around the room. Gasps from spectators. A journalist whispered, "Oh my God," one of the jurors covering her mouth. When it ended, the courtroom was silent, except for the sound of someone crying softly. Emily realized it was Jennifer, Ron's other former employee who'd finally shown up to testify. Additionally, Torres continued, we have testimony from 4 other women documenting a 15-year pattern of harassment and assault by Mr. Kessler. We have evidence that his employer, roadside diner, corporate, paid multiple settlements to silence previous victims, and we have testimony from local law enforcement that Mr. Kessler attempted to file false charges against Ms. Rodriguez and her supporters to cover up his crime. Ron's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, my client has been a respected business owner for nearly 2 decades. This incident, while regrettable, was a momentary lapse in judgment during a stressful situation. A momentary lapse. Judge Preston's voice cut like steel. Counsel, I've watched that video. Your client physically restrained an employee and forcibly cut her hair while she cried and begged him to stop. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's assault. Your Honor, we believe the video lacks context. Then provide context. Judge Preston leaned forward, because from where I'm sitting, the context is that your client has been abusing his power for 15 years. And this time, he finally got caught. Ron's lawyer sat down, clearly realizing his strategy wasn't working. Torres called his witnesses. Marcus testified about what he'd seen, his voice shaking, but steady. Jennifer corroborated everything, adding details about Ron's previous behavior, the inappropriate comments, the wandering hands, the threats against anyone who complained. Then Amanda took the stand. She described her assault in clinical detail, explained the NDA she'd signed, the $10,000 that had bought her silence. I have a 3-year-old daughter, she said, looking directly at Ron. I stayed quiet because I was ashamed. But I'm not ashamed anymore. You should be. Sarah testified next, her medical credentials lending weight to every word. She'd brought her 15-year-old records, photos, diary entries, text messages. I became a doctor to help people, she said, but I failed to help the women who came after me by staying silent. That ends today. Jenna's testimony was brief but powerful. He made me feel worthless. He made me question my own reality. But seeing Emily's courage helped me realize he was the problem, not me, not any of us. Finally, Emily took the stand. She described the night in detail, the broken plates, Ron's anger, being dragged into the storage room, the sound of the clippers, watching her hair fall. Why didn't you fight back? Ron's lawyer asked on cross. Because he was my boss, Emily said simply. Because I needed that job to pay for nursing school. Because I'd seen what happened to people who challenged him. They got fired, blacklisted, destroyed. Because the system protects men like Ron, and I was scared no one would believe me. And yet here you are with an army of bikers behind you getting your tuition, paid by a corporation desperate to avoid bad publicity. Seems like you've done quite well from this assault. Emily felt anger flare in her chest. I didn't want money. I wanted justice. I wanted Ron to stop hurting people. If it took 99 bikers and media attention and corporate embarrassment to make that happen, then yes, I'm grateful for all of it. But I'd trade it all to go back and never have this happen in the first place. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Preston banged her gavel for order, but Emily saw approval in her eyes. When all testimony concluded, Judge Preston didn't need long to deliberate. Mr. Kessler, I find probable cause to bind you over for trial on all charges. Bail is set at $100,000. Additionally, I'm issuing a restraining order. You are not to contact Ms. Rodriguez or any of the other witnesses. You are not to return to any roadside diner location. Do you understand? Ron nodded, his face gray. Furthermore, Judge Preston continued, I'm recommending the State Attorney General investigate the roadside diner corporation for their role in enabling this pattern of abuse. This court is adjourned. As the gavel fell, Emily felt Bear's hand on her shoulder. She turned to see tears in his eyes. She would have been proud of you, he said quietly, and Emily knew he meant his sister. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Emily stood on the steps with Amanda, Sarah, and Jenna on one side, and the Iron Covenant forming a protective barrier on the other. How do you feel? A reporter called out. Emily looked at the women beside her, at the bikers behind her, at the courthouse where justice had finally been acknowledged. Like I can breathe again, she said. The morning was perfect. Clear sky, gentle breeze, the kind of September day that promised new beginnings. Emily stood outside her apartment at 6 a.m. A backpack slung over her shoulder, containing everything she'd need for her first day, notebooks, pens, her student ID for the nursing program, and a small photo of her mother that she'd carried through every difficult moment of the past 3 weeks. Her hair had started growing back, a soft, dark fuzz that made her look younger somehow. She'd considered wearing a wig or a hat, but something had shifted inside her. The bare head wasn't a mark of shame anymore. It was proof she'd survived. The rumble of engines echoed down the quiet street. Emily smiled. She'd expected Bear, maybe Rose, and a few others. But as the motorcycles rounded the corner, she realized the entire Iron Covenant had come. All 99 members, bikes gleaming in the early light, riding in precise formation. Bear pulled up first, cutting his engine and dismounting with that familiar, easy grace. He'd cleaned up for the occasion, beard trimmed, vest polished, and something new. A small ribbon pinned next to his patches, purple for domestic violence awareness. You didn't have to do this, Emily said, though her voice was thick with emotion. Yes, we did. Bear gestured to his bike. Every beginning deserves to be celebrated, especially one earned as hard as this. The other bikers had formed a line along the street, an honor guard of leather and chrome. Residents emerged from their apartments, including Mrs. Chen, who watched with a small, approving smile. Marcus was there too, having driven across town to see Emily off. He'd started working at a new restaurant, one with better management and no dark storage rooms. Amanda, Sarah, and Jenna pulled up in Amanda's car, climbing out with coffee and pastries. We couldn't miss this, Amanda said, pulling Emily into a hug. Our survivor becomes a healer. I'm just a first-year nursing student, Emily protested. You're more than that. Sarah said firmly. You're someone who stood up when it mattered. Someone who helped other women find their voices. That's already a healer. Rose approached with a small package wrapped in purple tissue paper. From all of us. Open it. Inside was a stethoscope, professional grade, engraved along the side with words that made Emily's eyes blur with tears. For Emily, who showed us that courage is contagious. The Iron Covenant. I can't accept this. It's too much. You can, and you will, Rose said, her voice brooking no argument. You gave us hot meals and kindness on the worst night of our lives. This doesn't come close to repaying that debt. Bear checked his watch. Your first class starts at 8. The nursing college is 30 minutes away. We should ride. Emily climbed onto the back of Bear's bike, settling into the passenger seat she'd occupied once before on that horrible night at the diner. But everything felt different now. She wasn't running away. She was riding towards something. The convoy moved out. 99 motorcycles escorting one nursing student through the morning streets. People stopped to watch, to photograph, to point. Some probably thought it was strange or intimidating, but Emily understood what they couldn't see. This was family chosen and earned riding together because that's what family did. They passed the roadside diner. It was closed permanently according to the signs in the windows. Corporate had shut down the location pending a complete restructuring of management and policies. Ron was awaiting trial, his bail paid by his family, but his reputation destroyed. The preliminary hearing had led to formal charges. 5 years minimum if convicted. Jennifer had texted Emily last night. They offered me my job back at a different location with a raise. I took it. Thank you for being brave enough to fight. The landscape changed as they left town. Strip malls giving way to trees, then to the manicured grounds of the community college. Students were arriving for the first day, most of them younger than Emily, fresh from high school with backpacks and nervous energy. The motorcycles pulled into the parking lot in formation, engines creating a symphony that turned every head on campus. They parked in a long line, and the riders dismounted, forming 2 rows, creating a pathway to the nursing building entrance. Emily climbed off Bear's bike, her legs unsteady. This was it. The dream she'd worked toward through double shifts and aching feet, and Ron's constant belittling, the future she'd almost given up on. Go on, Bear said gently. Well, wait here until you're inside. Emily walked between the rows of bikers, each one nodding as she passed. Snake gave her a thumbs up. Torch saluted. Hammer and Rose smiled with parental pride. The newer members she barely knew stood at attention, honoring this moment because their leader had asked them to, because that's what the Iron Covenant did. Amanda, Sarah, and Jenna waited at the end of the line. They walked with Emily to the building entrance for survivors moving forward together. This isn't goodbye, Amanda said. We're meeting for lunch next week. All of us, the Roadside Survivor Support Group, Jenna added. We've got 7 members now and more reaching out every day. You started something bigger than you know. Sarah hugged Emily tightly. Save lives. Emily Rodriguez. That's the best revenge. Becoming exactly who you were meant to be. Emily turned back one last time to look at the Iron Covenant. They stood beside their bikes, 99 people who'd kept a promise made 3 years ago during a storm. Bear raised his hand in final salute. Then, in perfect synchronization, all 99 bikers revved their engines. The sound thundered across the parking lot. Not a threat, but a celebration. A declaration that Emily Rodriguez was protected, believed in, and sent forth into her new life with an army at her back. Students and faculty members watched in amazement as the bikes roared once more, then fell silent. The message had been delivered. The vow fulfilled. Emily adjusted her new stethoscope in her backpack and walked through the doors of the nursing building. Behind her, she heard the motorcycles starting up, preparing to leave, but she didn't look back. There was no need. She carried them with her. Bear's grief transformed into protection. Rose's wisdom, Amanda's courage, Sarah's determination, Jenna's healing. She carried the memory of that storm 3 years ago, when she'd made hot meals for strangers and unknowingly planted seeds that would save her life. The first class was anatomy and physiology. Room 104, Emily found a seat near the front, pulled out her notebook, and wrote the date at the top of the first page. Around her, other students chattered nervously about syllabi and textbooks and whether they'd survived the program. Emily smiled to herself. She'd survived worse than nursing school. She'd survived assault, corporate intimidation, community judgment, and her own despair. She'd survived because she'd been brave enough to accept help because 99 bikers had honored. A debt she never knew existed because other women had found their voices when she found hers. The professor entered, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and scrubs decorated with cartoon bandages. Welcome to nursing school. I know you're all nervous. That's normal, but I want you to remember something. You're here because you want to help people. That desire to heal, to comfort, to stand with those who are suffering, that's already inside you. My job is just to teach you the technical skills to express it. Emily thought about the women in the Roadside Survivors group, about Marcus finding his courage, about Bear finally getting a chance to protect someone the way he couldn't protect his sister. Healing wasn't just about medicine. It was about standing up, speaking truth, refusing to let cruelty go unchallenged. She'd learned that before she ever set foot in this classroom. Outside, the last rumble of motorcycles faded into the distance, but Emily could still feel them. 99 hearts beating in rhythm with hers. 99 voices saying what she'd needed to hear most. You matter. Your pain matters. Your justice matters. Your future matters. The professor began the lecture, and Emily Rodriguez, former waitress, assault survivor, and future nurse, picked up her pen and started writing. Her new life had begun, and this time, nobody could take it away. The end.